At this point, I've already vaulted off the stage and I'm in a full sprint down the aisle. When I was first getting into tattooing, I thought that conventions were the coolest thing. I absolutely love the high energy environment of conventions. You know, you're meeting a bunch of new clients, new artists, making new connections. I think that really the first time I ever walked into a tattoo convention, it just felt like home. So some years back, I was still a tattoo apprentice and I was really looking forward to starting to tattoo at conventions. The shop I was working at was booked for the Philadelphia Tattoo Convention. Unfortunately for me, I was not quite ready to take this on yet. It's such a high pressure and fast moving environment where you're drawing custom tattoos and doing them for clients on the spot. So it's a lot of pressure. You really have to be comfortable and understand what you're doing before you can take on a tattoo convention like this, especially the Philadelphia Tattoo Convention. I believe it's the biggest tattoo convention in the United States, possibly the world. It's one of the biggest. So the plan for this convention was the shop was going to go down to the convention and I was going to go down as their apprentice and just help out for the weekend. You know, breaking down stations, chatting with clients while the other artists are tattooing, you know, all the normal apprentice stuff. So even though I wasn't going to get to tattoo this year, I was super excited for the opportunity just to hang out. For me as an apprentice, just getting to hang out there all weekend sounded like a dream. Unfortunately, that dream would be very short-lived. So the convention's booked and we're all super excited to go down, but a few weeks before the convention, one of our artists actually got a job offer from a different tattoo studio and he ended up taking it. And of course, we're all very excited for him, you know, new job opportunity. That's great. Good luck to you. But this left the shop in a bit of a predicament. We had 4 spaces for artists booked at this convention, and now we only have 3 artists. The booths at this convention are not cheap either, so this presented a considerable problem for the studio. One night we're sitting there at the studio and my boss looks at me and he says, "Looks like you're up, kid." You know, I have about 6 months of tattooing under my belt at this point, and my boss is asking me to take on one of the highest trafficked and largest tattoo conventions in the world. So I was shook, honestly. You know, just in terms of skill set, supplies, confidence, I was not ready for this at all. So very quickly, this dream of mine was turning into an absolute nightmare. So the convention comes and we load all our stuff in. We get our booths set up, banners, tattoo stations set up, we're good to go. The doors to the convention center open and our shop is instantly swarmed. All the artists have clients in their chairs almost immediately, except for me. Now, that of course hurt in the moment, but to be fair, I would not have wanted to be tattooed by this nervous child either. I think I had probably a couple of crappy paintings sitting on the table and then like 5 to 10 tattoo photos in my portfolio. So it wasn't a great look, honestly, and no wonder I wasn't booked out right away. So some hours go by and still no luck. No one wants to get tattooed by me. Everyone else is keeping busy and I'm just kind of over it at this point. So I go over to my boss and I say, "Hey, I'm gonna go take a lap. And you know, just shoot me a text if anyone comes by inquiring for a tattoo." So I leave the booth, I'm walking around and I stumble upon the sideshow stage. There's a performer about to start his act, this guy named Alakazam. If you're unfamiliar, Alakazam is a Australian stunt performer. He juggles knives and does contortionist stuff, all kinds of weird shit. So naturally, I'm intrigued. It was my first time seeing this guy perform, so I take a front row seat. And of course his performance is awesome. You know, I definitely made the right call leaving my sad little booth to go watch this guy, you know, blow fire and swallow swords. It was cool. So Alakazam's show is coming to an end, and he needs 4 volunteers to help him perform the finale. So a couple people raise their hands and he needs 1 more. Of course, I'm sitting there front row and he picks me right out of the crowd. How about this guy here? I figure this probably isn't the best call since I'm technically on the clock or on call right now, but I figure what are the chances that someone's gonna walk up to the booth in the next 5 minutes and ask about a tattoo? So I make my way up to the stage. So Alakazam is gonna do a performance on top of this tall platform, which he's gonna balance on and do some of his crazy Alakazam shit. So he instructs the volunteers to each grab one end of a rope to steady the platform in the center of the stage. So I grab the rope with both of my hands, as do the other 3 people. We pull the rope taut. So he makes his way to the top of the platform and starts with a standard juggling routine. 3 of the little balls and all is going well. Then, as if on cue, I get a text on my Apple Watch from my boss. Hey, there's someone here who wants to get a tattoo. Get back to the booth. I've mentioned before that my boss was a bit of a hard ass, so when this guy says get back to the booth, it does not mean 10 minutes from now, it means immediately. Obviously, I'm a little bit tied up at this point. So Alakazam now starts to enter the final phase of this act where he replaces the juggling balls with 3 machetes. Not to mention a knife apparatus that goes in his mouth and up, and there are 2 machetes spinning on top of this mouth apparatus of his. The timing is absolutely awful. So far my first convention performance has been an absolute flop. I've done no tattoos and it's been embarrassing, quite frankly. So I'm fearing for my job at this point. I decide I at least have to text him back and let him know I'll be there ASAP. So I had to think to myself, if I let this guy fall because I'm afraid of my boss, can I be held accountable? I didn't want to find out, so I resorted to nose texting on my Apple Watch, BRB. Now, my boss was not the most tech-savvy person, so BRB meant nothing to him, and he texted me back with just a barrage of question marks. I would have loved to see this situation from an outside perspective, just watching this guy juggling machetes 15 feet in the air, while this nervous little kid is just holding a rope and yelling into his Apple Watch. I'm like, be right back, I'm currently doing an impromptu sideshow performance. The minutes are absolutely dragging by, and mercifully, Alakazam finally finishes his performance. He climbs down from his platform and he wants to take a moment to thank all of his volunteers. At this point, I've already vaulted off the stage and I'm in a full sprint down the aisle. So just in the nick of time before losing this client and potentially my job, I make it back to the booth. Now my boss pulls me aside and he's like, "Where the hell were you?" I'm like, "Quite honestly, you wouldn't believe me if I told you." Perhaps I should send him this video for context. Look at that, you made it to the end. Thanks for checking out our video. Make sure you hit that subscribe button and stay tuned for more crazy tattoo stories.